The whole town laughed when Marcus Bennett returned home with a single travel bag and a shattered heart. The man who once appeared on magazine covers now walked dusty roads alone. The entrepreneur who had owned companies, luxury vehicles, and a stunning penthouse suddenly struggled to afford his next meal. Former friends vanished without explanation. The woman he planned to marry walked away. Neighbors whispered behind his back whenever he passed. Many believed his story was over. Many believed his greatest days had already disappeared forever. Yet while nearly everyone mocked his downfall, fate quietly prepared an unexpected beginning. Before Marcus became a man people pitied, he was a man people admired. At 30 years old, he stood among the most successful young business leaders in the country. His interviews appeared on television regularly. Business magazines praised his determination and vision. Young entrepreneurs repeated his advice online. From the top floor of his glass office tower, he often watched the city stretching endlessly beneath him. Every crowded street seemed to celebrate achievement. Every shining building reflected years of sacrifice. Marcus had not inherited wealth. He had built everything through persistence, discipline, and countless sleepless nights. His journey began with one computer and a small rented office. During those difficult years, he often worried about paying employees. Some nights he slept at work because transportation cost too much. Still, he refused to quit. One company became several. Small contracts became major partnerships. His technology ventures expanded into real estate and logistics. Success arrived gradually, then all at once. Wealth followed, respect followed, influence followed. Eventually, Marcus became a symbol of possibility. People saw the finished empire. Few remembered the struggle that created it. Among all his achievements, one person mattered more than every business accomplishment combined. Her name was Vanessa. She was intelligent, elegant, and confident. They met during a charitable event and quickly formed a strong connection. Their relationship flourished naturally. Soon they became engaged. Family members celebrated. Friends offered congratulations. Plans for a spectacular wedding moved forward enthusiastically. Marcus believed his future was secure. He believed he had found lasting love. He believed every sacrifice had finally been rewarded. Unfortunately, danger already existed inside the empire he trusted completely. That danger wore the face of his closest business partner, Damon. For years, Marcus treated him like family. He trusted him with sensitive financial records and major company decisions. Because of that trust, Marcus never noticed the deception growing beneath the surface. Damon secretly transferred money into hidden accounts. He manipulated documents carefully. He created false expenses and fraudulent investments. Each action remained concealed behind layers of paperwork. The theft continued quietly until one morning everything exploded. Investors arrived demanding answers. Auditors presented alarming reports. Millions had vanished, then tens of millions, then even more. Marcus stared at the documents in disbelief. Nothing made sense. Investigations quickly uncovered devastating evidence. The missing money was real. The forged records were real. Because many documents carried counterfeit versions of Marcus's signature, suspicion immediately fell upon him. News outlets spread the scandal across the country. Television panels debated his guilt. Newspapers printed damaging headlines. Social media erupted with accusations and rumors. Investors panicked. Business partners withdrew support. Banks demanded repayment. Company values collapsed. Employees feared losing their jobs. Marcus watched helplessly as everything he spent years building began crumbling around him. Meanwhile, Damon disappeared completely. His phone stopped working. His house stood empty. He seemed to vanish into thin air. Although investigators eventually proved Marcus was innocent, the victory arrived too late. Public trust had already evaporated. His businesses drowned beneath overwhelming debt. Properties were seized. Vehicles were repossessed. Assets disappeared one after another. The empire that once inspired admiration became a memory. Inside his enormous home, silence replaced celebration. Staff members left. Visitors stopped coming. The telephone rarely rang. Sitting alone one evening, Marcus stared at a framed photograph of himself and Vanessa. He desperately needed support. Instead, another heartbreak arrived. Vanessa confessed she no longer wanted their future together. She could not imagine marrying a man whose future seemed uncertain. Her engagement ring remained on the table. Moments later, she walked out forever. The loss of money hurt deeply. The loss of trust hurt even more. But Vanessa's departure wounded him most of all. Weeks later, he sat inside a small apartment, watching rain slide down the window. Every city street reminded him of failure. Every memory felt painful. After hours of reflection, one thought remained. Home. The small community where he was born, the place he had avoided for years while chasing success. Maybe it was time to begin again. Not as a celebrity, not as a billionaire, simply as Marcus Bennett. The next morning, he packed his remaining belongings into one travel bag and boarded a bus. As the city disappeared behind him, he felt completely alone. He had no company, no fortune, no fiancé, and no reputation. What Marcus did not know was that the road ahead would introduce him to someone extraordinary, and that single meeting would change everything in ways nobody could imagine. The bus rolled slowly along narrow country roads while Marcus stared through the dusty window. Endless fields stretched toward the horizon beneath a bright afternoon sky. Tall trees swayed gently in the warm breeze. Small communities appeared briefly before fading behind them. Everything felt familiar, yet strangely distant. The last time Marcus traveled this route, he arrived surrounded by success. Luxury vehicles followed him everywhere. Security guards opened doors before he touched them. People rushed forward, hoping to shake his hand. Today, he carried one worn travel bag and a heart filled with uncertainty. As the bus approached his hometown, anxiety tightened inside his chest. Poverty did not frighten him. Hard work did not frighten him. Facing people who remembered his rise frightened him more than anything. They knew his story. They knew his accomplishments. They would also know his collapse. Marcus wondered how many had already heard the rumors. He wondered how many believed the headlines. Most of all, he wondered whether anyone would see beyond the scandal. The bus finally stopped near the community market. Marcus stepped onto the dusty road and adjusted the strap on his bag. For a few moments, nobody paid attention. Then someone recognized him. A surprised voice echoed through the crowd. Another followed. Soon whispers spread rapidly from one person to another. Curious faces turned toward him. Some people stared openly. Others exchanged knowing looks. Marcus lowered his head and continued walking. The comments began almost immediately. People spoke quietly at first. Then they became bolder. Someone mentioned his lost fortune. Someone laughed about his failed companies. Another person claimed success had finally abandoned him. Every remark felt painful. Marcus tried ignoring them, but the words followed him through every street. The same people who once celebrated his achievements now seemed entertained by his downfall. Their judgment cut deeper than he expected. At the edge of town stood the small house his parents left behind. Years earlier, he renovated it for them with pride. Since their passing, it remained mostly empty. Dust covered the furniture, weeds filled the yard, spider webs occupied neglected corners. Marcus stood silently in the doorway and absorbed the reality before him. This house represented everything he still possessed. The billionaire no longer existed. The businessman no longer existed. Only Marcus remained. That evening, he cleaned every room himself. He swept floors, removed cobwebs, and opened windows to welcome fresh air. The work exhausted him physically, yet it calmed his mind. By nightfall, he lay on a simple mattress, staring at the ceiling. The silence felt unfamiliar. His former life overflowed with meetings, visitors, and constant activity. Here, only distant insects and rustling leaves interrupted the quiet. Sleep arrived slowly. The following morning, Marcus woke before sunrise. Old habits remained difficult to break. In the past, early mornings meant strategy meetings and business decisions. Now there was no office waiting, no employees expecting instructions, no opportunities knocking on his door. He sat beneath a large tree outside the house and wondered how he would survive. His remaining savings were disappearing quickly. He needed work immediately. Unfortunately, finding work proved harder than expected. Some residents believed his presence brought misfortune. Others assumed he secretly hid money somewhere. Many simply enjoyed watching him struggle. Marcus offered help to farmers. They declined politely or laughed openly. He approached traders seeking temporary work. They refused as well. Each rejection chipped away at his confidence. The man who once employed hundreds could not secure a single opportunity. Days passed. The humiliation grew heavier. One afternoon, while sitting outside his home, an elderly hunter named Mr. Elijah stopped nearby. The old man studied Marcus carefully before taking a seat beside him. After several moments of silence, he asked a simple question about his plans. Marcus admitted he no longer had any. The confession felt painful. Mr. Elijah listened quietly and then pointed toward the distant forest. He explained that hunting had supported his family for decades. It was difficult work, but honest work. If Marcus was willing to learn, he offered to teach him. For the first time since returning home, a small spark of hope appeared. The opportunity seemed humble compared to his former life, yet it was still an opportunity. The next morning, Marcus followed the old hunter into the forest. Towering trees blocked much of the sunlight. Birds sang from hidden branches. Insects buzzed constantly through the undergrowth. Within hours, Marcus realized hunting demanded far more skill than he imagined. The heat drained his energy. Mosquitoes attacked relentlessly. His feet ached from rough terrain. Meanwhile, the elderly hunter moved effortlessly through the wilderness. Marcus stumbled repeatedly. Several times he considered quitting. Pride reminded him of everything he once possessed. Frustration reminded him of everything he lost. Yet each time he struggled, Mr. Elijah encouraged him to continue. Success still required persistence. Those words awakened memories from Marcus's earliest entrepreneurial days. By the end of the week, he remained exhausted but determined. The forest had not welcomed him easily. The community still mocked him. His future remained uncertain, yet something inside him refused to surrender completely. Standing beneath the fading evening sky, Marcus looked toward the endless trees once more. Unknown to him, another life-changing encounter was already approaching. And somewhere nearby, a young woman named Ava was about to notice the man everyone else had stopped seeing. Weeks passed, and Marcus slowly adapted to his new reality. Every morning before sunrise, he entered the forest carrying an old rifle and a simple canvas bag. Every evening, he returned tired, dirty, and often disappointed. Some days he managed to catch rabbits or small game. Other days, he came home empty-handed. The income barely covered his basic needs, but it was enough to survive. More importantly, it gave him purpose. The lessons from Mr. Elijah extended far beyond hunting. The old man taught patience, discipline, and humility. Marcus learned how to read footprints pressed into soft soil. He learned how to move quietly through dense brush. He learned how to wait without frustration. Years earlier, he measured success in profits and growth charts. Now, success sometimes meant returning home with a single rabbit. One afternoon, after several unsuccessful hours in the forest, Marcus finally caught his first rabbit without assistance. The achievement seemed insignificant compared to the billion-dollar deals he once negotiated. Yet the pride he felt surprised him. It was honest work. No boardrooms, no investors, no headlines, just effort and reward. That evening, he sold the rabbit at the market and earned a small amount of money. For the first time since losing everything, he felt useful again. Unfortunately, the community never stopped reminding him of his fall. The market became a daily stage for humiliation. Whenever Marcus arrived carrying game, certain people made jokes at his expense. Some called him the hunter billionaire. Others laughed about his former companies. Young men followed him occasionally, pretending to ask whether they could purchase meat using worthless company stock. The laughter that followed echoed through the marketplace. Marcus usually remained silent. Deep inside, anger sometimes burned fiercely. Part of him wanted to remind them how hard he once worked. Part of him wanted to defend himself against every insult. But another part of him was simply exhausted. He no longer had energy for arguments. He focused on selling his catch and returning home. One evening, after enduring another day of ridicule, Marcus sat alone outside his house. The moon hung brightly above the quiet town. Crickets filled the night air with constant sound. He stared toward the dark horizon and reflected on everything he had lost. Memories returned one after another. The businesses, the luxury lifestyle, Vanessa, the confidence he once carried everywhere. For a moment, doubt overwhelmed him completely. Maybe the community was right. Maybe his success had been temporary. Maybe he truly was a failure now. The thought hurt more than he wanted to admit. He lowered his head and closed his eyes. A gentle voice interrupted his thoughts. Marcus looked up and saw an elderly woman standing nearby with a basket resting on her arm. She smiled warmly and greeted him. The interaction seemed ordinary, yet it felt different from every conversation he had experienced recently. She mentioned purchasing one of his rabbits the previous day. Her grandchildren enjoyed it. Then she thanked him sincerely. The exchange lasted less than a minute, yet those simple words stayed with him long after she disappeared into the darkness. For weeks, people focused on what he lost. This woman focused on what he contributed. She did not care about old headlines. She cared that he provided food for her family. The realization offered unexpected comfort. Perhaps not everyone judged him through the same harsh lens. The following weeks settled into a predictable rhythm. Marcus hunted. He sold meat. People laughed. Life moved forward. Then one ordinary morning, something unusual happened. After returning from the forest with several rabbits, Marcus entered the crowded marketplace. Vendors arranged vegetables neatly across wooden tables. Children chased one another between stalls. Shoppers negotiated prices loudly. The atmosphere buzzed with activity. As usual, whispers followed him. As usual, some people laughed. But among the crowd stood someone different. A young woman balanced a basket of vegetables on her head. Her clothing appeared simple and worn. Nothing about her suggested wealth or influence. Yet unlike everyone around her, she was not smiling at his misfortune. She simply watched quietly. There was something unusual in her eyes. Kindness. Marcus noticed her briefly before turning back to his work. He sold most of his rabbits and prepared to leave. Then he heard a soft voice behind him. "Excuse me." He turned. The young woman stood there holding a small cloth purse. "I would like to buy one rabbit," she said. Her smile carried no pity, no judgment, no hidden amusement, only respect. Marcus handed her the rabbit. She counted every coin carefully before paying. It was obvious money was scarce for her. Even so, she thanked him with genuine warmth. After a brief silence, she asked whether his name was Marcus. He hesitated slightly. Recently, hearing his own name usually meant another joke was coming. Still, he nodded. "Yes," the young woman smiled again. "My name is Ava." Something about her voice felt comforting, peaceful. Before leaving, she said words Marcus had not heard in a very long time. "You're working hard. I respect that." Then she walked away. Marcus remained standing motionless as the sounds of the marketplace faded around him. For months, people had mocked him. For months, people treated him like a man whose life no longer mattered, yet this stranger had given him something priceless: respect. As he watched Ava disappear into the crowd, he felt an unfamiliar warmth inside his chest. He had no idea that this simple conversation was about to become the beginning of the most important relationship of his life. And while the town continued laughing at Marcus Bennett, destiny had already chosen a very different ending for his story. After meeting Ava at the market, Marcus found himself thinking about her far more than expected. It was not because she was wealthy. She was not. It was not because she possessed influence. She had none. What stayed in his mind was her kindness. During the darkest chapter of his life, when nearly everyone focused on his failures, she chose to acknowledge his effort. The next morning, Marcus entered the forest before sunrise as usual. Cool air drifted through the trees while birds welcomed the day from hidden branches. Normally, hunting demanded his complete attention, yet his thoughts kept returning to the young woman from the market. "You're working hard. I respect that." The words echoed repeatedly inside his mind. Nobody had spoken to him that way in a very long time. By midday, he managed to catch 2 rabbits and a wild bird. It was not an extraordinary day, but it was productive. Carrying his catch, he headed toward the market. The town square overflowed with activity. Vendors called out prices, children laughed, customers moved from stall to stall. Marcus arranged his game carefully on a small wooden table and waited. Within an hour, most of his merchandise sold. Then he heard a familiar voice. "Good afternoon." Marcus looked up. Ava stood before him carrying a basket filled with vegetables. A smile immediately appeared on her face. To his surprise, a smile appeared on his as well. They exchanged greetings and began talking casually. Ava asked about business. Marcus joked about becoming a successful hunter. She laughed softly. The sound felt surprisingly comforting. For the first time in months, Marcus laughed genuinely. The moment felt so natural that it almost startled him. Ava noticed. "You should smile more often," she said. Marcus shook his head playfully. "Life hasn't given me many reasons lately." Her expression softened. "I understand." The sincerity in her voice made him curious. Most people offered empty sympathy. Ava sounded like someone who truly understood hardship. A few days later, Marcus discovered why. Heavy rain had fallen throughout the night, turning roads into rivers of mud. While walking toward the market, Marcus noticed someone struggling with a wheelbarrow loaded with firewood. One wheel had sunk deep into the ground. Without hesitation, he moved closer. As he approached, he recognized Ava. Sweat covered her forehead, despite the cool weather. "Need help?" he asked. Her smile appeared immediately. "I won't refuse." Together, they pushed the wheelbarrow free from the mud. After several minutes of effort, it rolled smoothly again. Marcus glanced at the heavy load. "You sell firewood too?" Ava nodded. "Vegetables don't always earn enough." The answer surprised him. Until that moment, he had not fully noticed the condition of her clothing or the age of her shoes. Life clearly had not been easy for her. As they walked together, Marcus finally asked whether she lived with family. The smile on her face faded slightly. "No." Something in her tone immediately caught his attention. After a brief silence, she explained. Her parents died when she was a child. Her father lost his life in a tragic accident. Her mother became seriously ill afterward and eventually passed away as well. Marcus listened quietly. Ava continued speaking with remarkable calmness. After losing her parents, she was sent to live with relatives. Instead of finding comfort, she spent years feeling unwanted. She worked constantly. She rarely felt like part of the family. The pain remained visible in her eyes. Yet bitterness was completely absent. Marcus found that remarkable. Many people became angry after suffering less. Ava somehow remained kind. By the time they reached the market, his respect for her had grown tremendously. That evening, he sat outside his home, reflecting on her story. Compared to everything she endured, perhaps his own suffering was not unique. Perhaps hardship touched everyone differently. Over the following weeks, Marcus and Ava began seeing each other regularly. Sometimes they met at the market. Sometimes they crossed paths on town roads. Sometimes Marcus helped carry firewood. Sometimes Ava purchased meat from him. Their conversations gradually became longer. Their friendship developed naturally. One afternoon, Marcus returned from the forest empty-handed. Not a single rabbit, not a single bird. Nothing. Discouragement weighed heavily on him. He sat beneath a large tree near the market, wondering how he would afford food for the week. A shadow appeared beside him. Ava. Without saying a word, she handed him a wrapped package. Marcus frowned. "What's this?" "Lunch." He immediately tried refusing. She immediately refused his refusal. Then she suggested sharing it together. Soon they sat beneath the tree, eating rice and vegetable stew, while people moved around them. For the first time since losing everything, Marcus felt something unexpected. Peace. Not excitement, not happiness. Peace. Nearby, several townspeople noticed them together. Whispers quickly followed. The failed businessman and the orphan girl. What a pair. Laughter echoed across the market. Marcus felt irritation rising immediately. Ava barely reacted. When he asked whether the comments bothered her, she simply shrugged. People always talk. Her answer surprised him. When he pressed further, she smiled. "If I spend my whole life worrying about opinions, when will I have time to live my own life?" Marcus stared at her. The simplicity of her wisdom amazed him. Years spent negotiating complex business deals had taught him many things. Yet this young woman seemed to understand life better than most successful people he had ever met. As the sun began setting beyond the marketplace, Marcus realized something important. The town still saw him as a failure. Ava did not, and somehow that difference was beginning to change everything inside him. What neither of them realized was that their growing friendship was quietly becoming something much deeper, something stronger than either one was prepared to admit. The weeks following their growing friendship brought a sense of peace Marcus had not experienced in years. His circumstances remained difficult. He still hunted every day to survive. His income remained small. Many people still laughed whenever they saw him. Yet something inside him had changed. The reason was Ava. For the first time since losing everything, Marcus no longer felt completely alone. Every morning before entering the forest, he wondered whether he would see her later. Every evening, he looked forward to their conversations. Sometimes they talked only briefly. Sometimes they remained together until sunset painted the sky with brilliant shades of gold and orange. Without realizing it, Ava had become the brightest part of his day. One morning, Marcus stepped outside before dawn, carrying his hunting bag. To his surprise, someone stood near his gate. It was Ava. She carried a small basket covered with a cloth. Marcus smiled. "What are you doing here this early?" Instead of answering, she handed him the basket. "Open it." Inside were roasted sweet potatoes and a bottle of water. Marcus looked up in surprise. "What's this for? You spend entire days in the forest. Sometimes?" Ava crossed her arms playfully. "And sometimes you forget to eat." Marcus laughed. She was right. Weeks earlier, he had casually mentioned spending long hours hunting without food. Apparently, Ava remembered every detail. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I know." The simple answer warmed his heart. As he walked toward the forest, he glanced back once. Ava remained standing near the gate, smiling. The image stayed with him throughout the day. Deep inside the forest, while waiting quietly beside an animal trail, Marcus found himself reflecting on something important. Most people cared about who he used to be. Ava cared about who he was now. The difference meant everything. Later that afternoon, Marcus returned carrying 2 rabbits. As he approached the market, he noticed a crowd gathered near Ava's vegetable stall. At first, he assumed business was going well. Then he heard shouting. His smile disappeared immediately. A wealthy merchant named Mrs. Carter stood in front of Ava. Her voice carried across the market. "You call these fresh tomatoes?" Ava responded calmly. "They are fresh." The older woman became even louder. "Are you calling me dishonest?" Several people stopped to watch. Marcus quickly realized the disagreement had little to do with vegetables. Mrs. Carter simply enjoyed bullying those she considered beneath her, and Ava, a poor orphan with no powerful family, represented an easy target. Marcus stepped forward. "Is there a problem?" The merchant turned toward him. A look of contempt appeared immediately. "Well, look who came to help." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "The famous hunter." More laughter followed. Marcus ignored them. His attention remained on Ava. "Are you okay?" She nodded. Mrs. Carter rolled her eyes dramatically. "Of course you defend each other." The insults continued. The poor hunter and the poor orphan. Perfect together. Marcus felt anger rising inside him. Before he could respond, Ava gently touched his arm. The gesture immediately stopped him. She shook her head. No argument was necessary. Eventually, the merchant left after receiving a replacement tomato. The crowd dispersed. When they were finally alone, Marcus looked at Ava. "Why didn't you defend yourself?" She smiled softly. "Some battles aren't worth fighting. She was insulting you. She insults everyone." Marcus sighed. "I don't like seeing people treat you that way." Ava's expression softened. "And I don't like seeing people treat you that way." For a moment, silence settled between them. Both understood something few others could. They knew what it felt like to be judged unfairly. They knew what it felt like to suffer. Perhaps that shared understanding created a bond stronger than either realized. Several days later, a powerful storm arrived. Rain fell continuously for 3 straight days. Roads disappeared beneath mud and water. Business slowed almost completely. Hunting became nearly impossible. Marcus spent most of his time inside his small house repairing furniture and organizing supplies. On the 3rd afternoon, someone knocked on the door. When he opened it, Ava stood outside completely soaked. Rain dripped from her clothing. Marcus laughed. "You look like you lost a fight with the weather." She laughed too. The weather won easily. He invited her inside immediately. Soon they sat beside a window listening to rain pound against the roof. Hours passed as they talked. They shared childhood memories. They discussed favorite foods. They spoke about dreams once abandoned and dreams still alive. Eventually, the conversation turned toward Marcus's past. Ava looked out the window. "Do you miss it?" Marcus knew exactly what she meant. His companies, his wealth, his old life. After a long pause, he nodded. "Sometimes." Ava smiled knowingly. "Only sometimes?" Marcus laughed. "Fine. More than sometimes." They both smiled. Then she asked what he missed most. The answer surprised him. "Not the money." Ava looked curious. "Then what?" Marcus thought carefully. "The feeling that I was building something." She nodded slowly, then she said something he would never forget. "You're still building something." Marcus frowned. "What?" A small smile appeared on her face. "Your life." The answer stunned him. For years, investors praised his intelligence. Business leaders admired his vision. Yet this young woman continually saw truths he missed completely. Long after she left that evening, Marcus sat alone listening to the rain. Her words echoed inside his mind. Maybe life was not over. Maybe he was simply starting again. And somewhere deep within his heart, a feeling was growing stronger every day, a feeling he was not yet ready to name. As the months passed, the friendship between Marcus and Ava continued growing stronger. Neither planned it. Neither expected it. It simply happened naturally. What began as brief conversations in the market had become an essential part of their lives. Every morning, Marcus looked forward to seeing her. Every evening, Ava found herself smiling whenever she thought about him. Yet neither spoke openly about the emotions quietly growing inside their hearts. Perhaps they were cautious. Perhaps they were afraid. Or perhaps both had experienced enough disappointment to guard themselves carefully. Whatever the reason, they remained close friends, at least on the surface. One bright morning, Marcus returned from the forest carrying the largest deer he had caught in months. The animal attracted attention immediately. People gathered around him as he walked toward the market. Some stared in surprise. Others whispered among themselves. A few even congratulated him. By midday, every piece of meat had sold. For the first time in weeks, Marcus earned a respectable amount of money. As he finished counting his earnings, he noticed Ava approaching. The moment she saw him, her face lit up. "I heard the hunter became wealthy today." Marcus laughed. "If this is wealth, then I've been poor too long." Ava giggled. The sound immediately improved his mood. "I heard about your catch," she said. "It wasn't easy." "I believe that." Then, without warning, she reached into her basket and handed him a small orange. Marcus looked confused. "What's this?" "A gift." "For what?" "For working hard." He stared at the fruit quietly. Years earlier, people gave him expensive watches, luxury accessories, and extravagant gifts. Most expected something in return. This simple orange cost almost nothing. Yet somehow it felt more meaningful than any expensive present he had ever received. "Thank you," he said softly. Ava smiled. "You're welcome." As she walked away, Marcus found himself watching her longer than usual. Something inside him was changing, something impossible to ignore. That evening, he sat outside his house beneath a sky filled with stars. The night air felt calm and refreshing. His thoughts drifted toward Ava once again. Recently, she seemed to occupy his mind constantly. Her kindness, her strength, her laughter, her unwavering belief in him. Suddenly, the truth became impossible to avoid. Marcus was falling in love. The realization startled him. After Vanessa's betrayal, he promised never to trust his heart so easily again. The pain remained fresh. Sometimes he still remembered the moment she walked away. Sometimes he still heard her words. But when he compared Vanessa to Ava, the difference became undeniable. Vanessa loved success. Ava loved people. Vanessa stayed when life was comfortable. Ava appeared when life became difficult. Vanessa admired his accomplishments. Ava admired his character. For the first time, Marcus wondered whether real love had been standing beside him all along. Several days later, an opportunity brought them even closer. The local school announced plans to repair damaged classrooms. Limited resources meant volunteers were desperately needed. Most residents ignored the request. Some claimed they were too busy. Marcus volunteered immediately. To his surprise, Ava volunteered as well. For an entire week, they worked side by side. They carried lumber, they repaired desks, they painted walls, they cleaned the grounds. The work was exhausting, yet neither complained. One afternoon, while painting a classroom, Ava accidentally splashed paint across Marcus's shirt. She gasped dramatically. "Oh no!" Marcus looked down at the stain. For several seconds, he pretended to be offended. Then he smiled. "You attacked me." Ava burst into laughter. "It was an accident." That's exactly what every criminal says. Soon both were laughing so hard they could barely continue working. Several children watched nearby. One little girl approached curiously. "Are you husband and wife?" Both froze instantly. Ava's cheeks turned bright red. Marcus nearly dropped his paintbrush. The child looked genuinely confused. "You're always together." Several other children nodded in agreement. The awkward silence that followed felt endless. Finally, Marcus cleared his throat. "No, we're not married." The little girl shrugged. "You should be." Then she ran away. Neither Marcus nor Ava spoke for several moments, yet neither could completely dismiss the child's words. That evening, they walked home together beneath a beautiful sunset. Orange and gold colors stretched across the horizon. Birds glided overhead. The road ahead felt peaceful. Marcus realized how calm he felt whenever Ava was near. Not excited, not distracted, safe, understood. A few days later, another event forced him to confront his feelings even further. While hunting, Marcus slipped on wet ground and injured his ankle. The pain was immediate. By the time he reached home, walking had become difficult. News traveled quickly. That evening, Ava arrived carrying food and herbal remedies. "You should be resting," she said firmly. Marcus smiled. "I'm fine." "No," she replied, "you're stubborn." For the next hour, she cleaned the injury and cared for him patiently. Every time he winced, concern appeared on her face. Every time he tried standing, she ordered him back into his chair. Watching her care for him stirred something powerful inside his heart. Nobody had looked after him this way in years. Not even when he possessed everything. As Ava prepared to leave, she paused near the doorway. "Promise me something." "What?" "Stay off that ankle until it heals." Marcus smiled. "I promise." After she left, he remained seated quietly. A smile lingered on his face for the rest of the evening. The next morning, he discovered fresh food waiting outside his door. No note accompanied it. None was necessary. He already knew exactly who left it. And for the first time since losing everything, Marcus began imagining a future again. A future where Ava stood beside him. One evening, after his ankle had fully healed, Marcus sat beneath the large oak tree where he and Ava often talked for hours. The sky glowed with fading colors as the sun disappeared beyond the distant hills. A gentle breeze moved through the leaves overhead. Everything felt peaceful. A few minutes later, Ava arrived carrying 2 bottles of water. She handed one to Marcus before sitting beside him. For a while, neither spoke. They simply watched the sunset together. Eventually, Marcus broke the silence. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why are you always so kind?" Ava looked surprised. "What do you mean?" "You help everyone." She smiled softly. "Not everyone. You help me." For a moment, Ava stared toward the horizon. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "Because I know what it feels like when nobody helps." Marcus listened carefully. Ava explained how loneliness shaped much of her childhood. After losing her parents, many people ignored her pain. Some offered sympathy briefly. Most moved on. During those difficult years, she made herself a promise. If she ever had the chance to ease someone else's burden, she would do it. No matter how small the gesture. The simplicity of her answer touched Marcus deeply. For years, he searched for talented employees, trustworthy partners, and valuable connections. Yet the most remarkable person he had ever met was sitting beside him under a tree in a small town. As darkness settled around them, Marcus found himself sharing things he rarely discussed. He spoke about the fear he felt after losing his businesses. He spoke about the humiliation of returning home. He spoke about sleepless nights and moments when hope seemed impossible. Most painfully, he spoke about Vanessa. Ava listened quietly. She never interrupted. She never judged. She simply listened. When Marcus finished, silence filled the space between them. Finally, Ava turned toward him. Moonlight illuminated her face. Her eyes reflected compassion and understanding. "Marcus," she said softly. "Yes, your wealth never made you valuable." The words struck him immediately. Marcus stared at her. "Your character did." For months, he measured himself by everything he lost: money, status, success, recognition. Yet Ava saw something entirely different. She saw the man beneath those things, and somehow she still respected him. At that moment, everything became clear. Marcus finally understood what his heart had been trying to tell him. He loved her, not simply because she was kind, not simply because she stood beside him during difficult times, not simply because she believed in him when others stopped believing. He loved her because she truly saw him, and she stayed. The realization filled him with warmth unlike anything he had experienced before. Neither spoke about love that night, not yet. But something important changed between them. Something neither could reverse. For the first time since losing everything, Marcus stopped dwelling on his past. Instead, he began thinking about his future, and in every vision of that future, Ava stood beside him. Several days later, Marcus decided to seek advice. He visited Mr. Elijah while the elderly hunter repaired fishing equipment outside his home. The old man listened patiently as Marcus described his feelings. When he finished, Mr. Elijah smiled knowingly. "So, you love her?" Marcus laughed awkwardly. "Very much." The hunter nodded. "Then what's the problem?" Marcus stared at the ground. "I have nothing." The old man laughed. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." Mr. Elijah shook his head. "No," he pointed directly at Marcus. "You have integrity." Marcus remained silent. "You have courage." The old man continued. "You survived losing everything and kept moving forward." Marcus listened carefully. "And most importantly," Mr. Elijah added, "you have a good heart. Many wealthy people cannot say the same." The words stayed with Marcus long after he left. That evening, he sat outside his home, watching another beautiful sunset. For months, he measured himself by everything that disappeared. Maybe it was time to focus on what remained: his dignity, his values, his ability to love. The following morning, Marcus made a decision. He was going to ask Ava to marry him. The thought immediately filled him with nervous energy. Years earlier, he negotiated enormous business deals without fear. He spoke before large audiences confidently. He met influential leaders without hesitation. Yet the idea of proposing terrified him, because this mattered more than any business transaction ever could. Over the next several days, Marcus planned carefully. His resources were limited. There would be no expensive jewelry, no luxury restaurant, no extravagant celebration. Still, he wanted the moment to be meaningful. One afternoon, while walking through the forest, he discovered a beautiful clearing beside a small stream. Sunlight filtered gently through the trees. Birds sang overhead. Wildflowers surrounded the area. The location felt perfect. Immediately, Marcus knew this was where he would ask the most important question of his life. Only one problem remained: he could not afford an engagement ring. The realization troubled him deeply. Then inspiration arrived unexpectedly. An elderly craftsman in town specialized in carving beautiful wooden ornaments by hand. Marcus visited him the following day. After hearing the story, the craftsman smiled warmly. "For Ava?" Marcus laughed. "Is it that obvious?" The old man chuckled. "Everyone already knows." 3 days later, he presented Marcus with a beautiful ring carved from polished walnut wood. It was simple, elegant, meaningful. Marcus stared at it quietly. It was not expensive, it was not flashy, yet somehow it felt perfect. As he slipped the ring carefully into his pocket, excitement and fear mixed inside his heart. The moment he had been imagining for weeks was finally approaching, and he had no idea that Ava had been carrying a secret of her own. A secret that would make the next conversation far more emotional than either of them expected. Saturday arrived beneath a clear blue sky. Marcus woke before sunrise, unable to sleep any longer. Nervous energy raced through his body. The wooden ring rested safely inside his pocket. He had rehearsed his words repeatedly during the previous week, yet now that the moment had finally arrived, every carefully prepared sentence seemed to disappear. Throughout the morning, he struggled to focus on anything else. By midday, he met Ava near the market and invited her for a walk. She agreed immediately. As they followed a narrow path toward the forest, Ava chatted happily about customers, vegetables, and everyday events around town. Marcus listened while trying desperately to calm his racing heart. After several minutes, she glanced at him suspiciously. "You're unusually quiet today." Marcus forced a smile. "Just thinking." "About hunting?" "Something like that." Ava laughed. "You look nervous." If only she knew. Soon, they reached the beautiful clearing Marcus had discovered days earlier. The stream flowed gently nearby. Sunlight filtered through the branches overhead. Birds moved from tree to tree, while a soft breeze carried the scent of wildflowers. Ava stopped walking and looked around. "This place is beautiful," Marcus smiled. "I thought you would like it." "I do." For several moments, neither spoke. The peaceful atmosphere seemed almost magical. Marcus took a deep breath. This was the moment. He turned toward her. "Ava," something in his voice immediately changed her expression. "Yes?" Marcus swallowed hard. "There's something I need to tell you." Ava waited quietly. For a few seconds, words refused to come. Then Marcus finally spoke. "When I returned home, I thought my life was over." Ava listened carefully. "I lost my businesses." He paused. "I lost my money." His voice softened. "I lost the woman I thought I would marry." Pain briefly crossed his face. "I lost almost everything." Ava stepped closer. Marcus continued. "Then I met you." Tears immediately appeared in her eyes. "You treated me with kindness when everyone else laughed." His voice grew stronger. "You respected me when others judged me." A gentle smile touched his lips. "You believed in me when I stopped believing in myself." Ava's eyes glistened. Months of unspoken emotion suddenly filled the space between them. Marcus reached into his pocket and removed the wooden ring. Ava gasped softly. He lowered himself onto one knee. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Ava," he said. His voice trembled. "I have no fortune." More tears followed. "I have no luxury home." She covered her mouth. "I have no expensive gifts." The handcrafted ring rested in his hand. "All I have is my heart." For a moment, complete silence surrounded them. Even the birds seemed quiet. Then Marcus asked the question that would change both their lives forever. "Will you marry me?" Ava burst into tears. Not tears of sadness, tears of overwhelming joy. For several seconds, she could not speak. She simply stared at him, at the man who lost everything, the man who endured humiliation and heartbreak, the man whose character remained strong despite unimaginable setbacks, the man she loved. Finally, she nodded. "Yes." Marcus stared at her. His heart nearly stopped. Ava laughed through her tears. "Yes," he rose quickly. "You mean it?" She laughed again. "Of course I mean it." The next moment they embraced tightly. Nothing else mattered. Not the town, not the gossip, not the past, only each other. After several moments, Marcus gently placed the wooden ring onto her finger. Ava admired it immediately. "It's beautiful," Marcus smiled awkwardly. "It's not much." She shook her head firmly. "It's perfect." Then she surprised him. "Do you know why?" "Why?" "Because you made it special." The words touched him deeply. For the rest of the afternoon, they remained near the stream discussing their future. For the first time, the future felt exciting rather than frightening. Eventually, they returned to town. Unfortunately, news traveled faster than they did. Someone had apparently witnessed the proposal. By the next morning, the entire community knew. The reactions were exactly what Marcus expected. The market buzzed with gossip. Groups of women laughed openly. Men shook their heads and exchanged jokes. Many treated the engagement like entertainment. The orphan accepted. Who else would marry him? The poor hunter and the orphan belonged together. Laughter followed everywhere they went. Yet something was different this time. Neither Marcus nor Ava seemed bothered. Unlike before, they no longer faced criticism alone. They faced it together. One afternoon, while sitting beneath their favorite tree, another rude comment drifted across the road. To Marcus's surprise, Ava laughed. "You're laughing?" She nodded. "Because they're wrong." Marcus looked confused. "About what?" Ava lifted her hand and admired the wooden ring. "They think we're poor." Marcus smiled. "We are poor." Ava shook her head gently. "No, What do you mean? She looked directly into his eyes. We may not have money. A warm smile appeared on her face. But we have each other. Marcus could not speak. The truth of her words overwhelmed him. Money could disappear. Businesses could collapse. People could betray you. But genuine love remained priceless. As the sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon, they sat together watching the sky turn gold and crimson. The future remained uncertain. Challenges still waited ahead. Neither knew what tomorrow would bring. Yet for the first time in a very long while, neither felt afraid, because somewhere deep inside, both sensed that their greatest chapter had not begun yet. And far beyond their small town, events were already unfolding that would soon change everything. The months following Marcus and Ava's engagement became some of the happiest of their lives. They still faced financial struggles. Their small home still needed repairs. The community still produced occasional laughter and gossip. Yet none of those things seemed powerful enough to shake their happiness. Every morning, they woke with gratitude. Every evening, they planned a future together. The wedding preparations remained simple. There were no expensive planners, no luxury venues, no extravagant decorations. Friends who genuinely cared offered whatever help they could. Mr. Elijah donated wooden chairs. An elderly neighbor volunteered to prepare food. A local tailor agreed to create wedding clothes at a reduced cost. Children gathered flowers from nearby fields. The generosity touched both Marcus and Ava deeply. For so long, the loudest voices in town belonged to those who mocked them. Now they began noticing something else. There were also kind people, people who quietly supported them, people who wanted them to succeed. One afternoon, while arranging chairs outside the small church where the ceremony would take place, Marcus noticed Mr. Elijah smiling. "What?" Marcus asked. The old hunter chuckled. "You remind me of your father." Marcus paused. "My father?" Mr. Elijah nodded. "He loved your mother exactly the way you love Ava." A warm smile appeared on Marcus's face. The old man continued. "Your father wasn't wealthy when he married her either." Marcus listened carefully. But together they built a beautiful life. Those words remained with him for days. Perhaps true success had never depended on money. Perhaps it depended on who stood beside you during difficult seasons. A few days before the wedding, another test arrived. Several young men gathered outside Marcus's house while he returned from hunting. The moment they saw him, laughter erupted. "Look at the future millionaire's mansion." More laughter followed. "Make sure your bride doesn't get lost inside all those empty rooms." Years earlier, such insults would have angered him. This time, he simply smiled. The young men looked confused. "Why aren't you angry?" Marcus thought about Ava. Then he answered honestly, "Because I'm happy." Without another word, he walked inside. The laughter behind him faded quickly. That evening, he told Ava what happened. She laughed so hard, tears formed in her eyes. "You should have seen their faces," Marcus said. "I wish I had." They were disappointed. Ava smiled knowingly, because happy people are difficult to hurt. Once again, her wisdom amazed him. The day before the wedding finally arrived. Excitement filled the entire community. Not everyone attended because they supported the couple. Some arrived out of curiosity. Others expected something to go wrong. A few believed Ava would change her mind at the last moment. One woman even declared publicly that no sensible person would marry a man with no future. Unfortunately for her prediction, Ava overheard every word. She simply smiled and continued shopping. The woman seemed disappointed. Apparently, she expected a reaction. That night, neither Marcus nor Ava slept very much. Joy and nervous anticipation filled their hearts. For years, both dreamed of finding someone who truly loved them. Now that dream stood only hours away. As dawn approached, Marcus sat outside watching the sky brighten. Gratitude filled him. Months earlier, he believed life had ended. Now he was preparing to marry the woman who helped restore his faith in himself. Meanwhile, across town, Ava prepared for the ceremony. Several elderly women helped her get ready. Her dress was simple. No expensive jewelry decorated her neck. No luxury accessories completed the outfit. Yet when she looked into the mirror, tears filled her eyes, not because of the dress, because of what the day represented. For the first time in her life, she felt chosen, loved, valued. No longer the forgotten orphan, no longer the lonely girl struggling through life alone. Today she would become the wife of a man who genuinely cared about her. The thought overwhelmed her with emotion. Soon guests gathered at the small church. The building was modest. Flowers decorated the entrance. Wooden chairs filled the sanctuary. Nothing about the event appeared extravagant, yet everything about it felt sincere. As people arrived, whispers spread through the crowd, some still focused on Marcus's failure, others still joked about Ava's poverty. But those comments gradually grew quieter. Inside the church, Marcus waited nervously. His suit had been borrowed from a friend. His hands trembled slightly. Then the music began. Everyone turned toward the entrance. Ava appeared. The entire room fell silent. She was not wearing a designer gown. She was not surrounded by luxury. Yet she looked radiant, confident, beautiful, happy. As she walked slowly toward him, Marcus felt tears filling his eyes. Nothing else mattered. Not the gossip, not the judgment, not the past. Only her. The woman who stayed when everyone else left. The woman who believed in him when he doubted himself. The woman who taught him that worth could never be measured by wealth. When Ava finally reached the altar, their eyes met. Both smiled. The ceremony began. Neither of them realized that while they celebrated their love in a small-town church far away, a remarkable opportunity was already moving toward them. An opportunity connected to Marcus's past, an opportunity powerful enough to change their future forever. And before another season passed, the same people who laughed at them would be left completely speechless. Married life settled into a peaceful rhythm for Marcus and Ava. Their circumstances remained modest. The roof still leaked during heavy storms. Their furniture remained old. Some weeks required careful budgeting just to cover basic expenses. Yet despite everything, their home felt rich in ways money could never measure. Every morning, Marcus entered the forest before sunrise. Every morning, Ava headed toward the market carrying vegetables, firewood, or whatever goods she could sell. They worked hard. They laughed often. And together, they built a life filled with purpose. One evening, after another difficult week financially, Marcus sat quietly outside staring at the stars. Worry lingered in his eyes. Ava immediately noticed. "You're thinking about money again." Marcus smiled weakly. "Am I that obvious?" "Very." She sat beside him. For a while neither spoke. Then Ava rested her head gently on his shoulder. "Everything will work out." Marcus laughed softly. "You always sound certain." "Because I am." "How?" She looked toward the sky. "Because life never stays the same forever." Neither of them knew how true those words were. Several weeks later, while Marcus prepared for another hunting trip, an unfamiliar vehicle arrived in town. People immediately noticed. Luxury vehicles rarely visited their community. Curious residents gathered nearby. Marcus paid little attention at first. Then a sharply dressed man stepped out and asked a surprising question. "Does Marcus Bennett live here?" The crowd fell silent. Several people pointed toward Marcus's house. Within minutes, the visitor stood at Marcus's door. Marcus opened it cautiously. The stranger introduced himself as a representative from a major international investment group. At first, Marcus assumed there had been a mistake. There wasn't. Years earlier, before his downfall, Marcus had developed innovative business strategies that remained respected throughout the industry. While researching successful entrepreneurs who overcame adversity, the investment group rediscovered his story. They studied his leadership record. They reviewed his achievements. Most importantly, they examined how he handled failure. What impressed them was not his success, it was his character. The representative explained that several companies were preparing a major expansion project. They needed someone capable of leading it. Someone experienced, someone resilient, someone trustworthy. They wanted Marcus. For a moment, he thought he misunderstood. After everything that happened, opportunities like this seemed impossible. Yet the offer was real, very real. News spread through town before the meeting even ended. The same people who once laughed now watched with disbelief. The same people who mocked him now whispered different questions. Could it really be true? Was Marcus returning to the business world? Days later, Marcus traveled for several meetings. Weeks later, contracts were signed. Months later, the project became one of the most successful ventures in the region. Marcus did not become wealthy overnight, but steadily, carefully, his life transformed. New opportunities appeared, investments followed, businesses grew. The reputation he lost slowly returned. This time, however, something was different. Success no longer defined him, character did. Throughout every step of the journey, Ava remained beside him, exactly as she promised. When challenges appeared, she encouraged him. When victories arrived, she celebrated quietly. When recognition returned, she remained the same humble woman who once purchased a rabbit from a struggling hunter in the market. Several years later, Marcus and Ava stood together at the opening ceremony of a community center they funded themselves. The building provided educational programs, job training, and support for orphaned children. People traveled from neighboring towns to attend. Among the crowd stood many of the same individuals who once mocked them. The contrast felt remarkable. Those who called Marcus a failure now sought his advice. Those who laughed at Ava now praised her generosity. Life had come full circle. During the ceremony, a reporter asked Marcus a simple question. What was the most important lesson you learned after losing everything? Marcus paused thoughtfully. Then he smiled. His eyes found Ava standing nearby. Losing money isn't the same as losing yourself. The crowd listened carefully. Success can disappear, possessions can disappear, even people can disappear. But if you keep your character, your values, and your faith, you still have something worth building on. The audience applauded. Marcus continued, and sometimes losing everything creates room for something better. As he spoke, he reached for Ava's hand. The meaning behind his words was obvious. Because after losing businesses, wealth, reputation, and relationships, he found the greatest blessing of all. He found genuine love. Later that evening, Marcus and Ava sat together watching the sunset. The sky glowed with the same beautiful colors they once admired years earlier beneath their favorite tree. Despite everything that changed, some things remained exactly the same. Their gratitude, their love, their friendship. Marcus smiled. Do you remember what people used to say about us? Ava laughed. Which comment? There were many. The poor orphan and the failed businessman belonged together. Ava smiled warmly. They were right about one thing. Marcus looked at her. What? She squeezed his hand gently. We do belong together. For a moment, neither spoke. The sunset reflected across the horizon. Birds drifted through the evening sky. Peace filled the air. Marcus realized something profound. His greatest success was never the empire he built. It was the life he built with Ava. And that life began the moment one kind person chose respect instead of ridicule. Sometimes losing everything is the first step toward finding exactly what you were meant to have. Sometimes failure becomes the doorway to purpose. And sometimes the people who believe in you when nobody else does become the greatest blessing of your entire life. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, your viewing location, and share this video.